Pháp dương vô thượng tôn, tam giới vô luân thập. Thiên nhân chi đạo, sư tử sanh chi từ phù. Nhất niệm quy năng diệt tam kỳ. Sướng dương nhược tán thán, ức kiếp mạt năng tầng.
Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Today we start with the first of 5 lectures based on the writing of the 30th Zen Patriarch, Tăng Sáng, counting from the Mahakasyapa being the first patriarch. This collection of writing is called Faith in the Enlightened Mind, or known in Vietnamese as Tính Tâm Minh. It reflects the wisdom and the experiences gained by the patriarch Tăng Sáng while practicing and following the Buddhist path. He wanted to preserve his Dharma body in this world by leaving behind these writings as guidance for future generations to learn from, so that they can return to their pure mind. We start by reading the text. From activity, it returns to stillness. When the condition for stillness is no more, then activity arises. While being stuck in duality, you would not know that it came from one source. In general, most practitioners do not know the fundamental character of their pure mind, which is non-changing and complete stillness. When they don't understand this pure mind, then they will try to find all kinds of methods to comprehend it. In Zen, they use meditation techniques to stop activity and return to stillness. If the Zen practitioner stopped all physical or mental conditions from rising while meditating, then in 6 months to several years, his mind will be partially stilled. But every time he ends his meditation, his mind will be active again. Those practitioners who follow the small wheel path, like Theravada, use the meditation technique that has the going into and going out of meditation. Those who follow the big wheel path, like Mahayana, do not go in and out of meditation. The advanced practitioners who have reached the 4th dhyana level, Phi Phi Tưởng Xứ, only go into stillness and samadhi, while the practitioner at lower levels continue to go in and out of meditation. In the Platform Sutra, there was a mention of a monk who was asked whenever he meditated, did he still experience activity and stillness, which meant to ask if he went in and out of meditational state. He answered that he still goes into and out of meditational state, from stillness while in and activity when go out. This is from a Zen monk who had partially awakened, but not liberated. For an advanced Mahayana monk, each action taken and each word spoken always remain in the great Samadhi, Đại Định. There is no entering or exiting. A practitioner who is still attached to the form of stillness or activity will be stuck in the middle. He does not realize that his pure mind is already complete and settled. A practitioner who realizes that his still or active mind is only dependent on the situation, then he could generate a non-dependent thought, and the still and active form would have no place to stand. For example, in the Suragama Sutra, the Buddha talked about the sound contemplation technique, which focused on the uses of the ears. The sound that you hear from the outside world are created by causal condition of the world. This sound has the form of activity and stillness, birth and death. So if your mind follows these worldly sounds, then you are destined to the cycle of birth and death. But if you focus and only listen to the sound within your mind, which is not dependent on birth and death, then you would deeply enter the realm of your pure mind and be complete and free. This sound is called internal blissful sound, Yo. As you continue this practice, your mind would eventually be liberated and become one with the Buddha mind. The fourth stage of enlightenment is called Stream Enterer, Nhật Lưu. At this stage, you would enter a state where both the active or the still sounds are no longer being recognized. All six of your faculties like ears, eyes, nose, tongue, body, and thought would begin to experience some initial stage of blissfulness. You are not limited to sitting and meditating to hear the internal blissful sound. You can be active in walking, standing, lying, or sitting, and still be able to hear this blissful sound from your pure mind. As a result, it is not hard to stay in the great samadhi and see your original face that has always been with you by using the sound contemplation technique, Quán Âm. Now going back to the text. From activity, it returned to stillness. When the condition for the stillness is no more, then activity arises. These two lines clearly show that if you don't understand your pure mind, then stillness and activity comes and goes as you start and stop your meditation. The next two lines are, while being stuck in duality, you would not know that it comes from one source. A practitioner who has seen his pure mind would not pray to see the stillness or the activity. While in the great samadhi, the practitioner would always be in bliss no matter if he was standing, walking, sitting, or lying. The Buddha called this state as the constant blissfulness of the Dhamma body. With this Dhamma body, you would not need to seek in the east, west, south, or north, but to see what is in front of your face. You need to let go of the active motions and the stillness and enter the world of non-changing and complete stillness. This is why the great master did not use a lot of words. They don't want you to be biased based on words or be tied down based on a doctrine. You will not be free if you do. Some master would scream or use a cane to hit the student. There was a student who studied and lived in the temple with a fellow student and the master. Every time he asked, the answer he got back was always with heavy criticism and negative remarks. But he was able to tolerate it because there were only two of them every time he had the Dhamma talk. Until one day, the student seeks out the master to ask about the liberating principle of all Dhammas. Unfortunately, at that time, there were also other students there, learning about the Dhamma as well. Instead of receiving answers, he received sarcastic and embarrassing criticism, which he could not hide his anger any longer, because there were fellow students in the same room at the time. As a result, he loudly talked back to the master. I came here to ask for Dharma teachings because I want to learn about the liberating Dharma. But today, I receive nothing but yelling and criticism. I don't think we are compatible and am requesting your permission to leave the temple. The master smiled and asked, "So, are you saying that I have not spoken any truth and my words were only meant to humiliate you?" Right at that moment, the student woke up and became enlightened. We are the same way. How deluded we are stuck on the word's meaning. We hear criticism, we think of and get stuck on the critical words. The master criticism was meant to help the student go beyond the critical words, so the student can see his original face. But instead, the student's ego got the best of him and was stuck on the words and dharmas. In reality, not one dharma could really affect your original mind. Do you see how easy it was for the student to reach enlightenment in the ancient time? In today's world, it is difficult to teach enlightenment because the students are mostly focusing on the words and not focusing on the action or implementation. Therefore, the teaching of the Master will not be enough to open your mind. All dharmas are not pure and impure, are not dynamic and static. It is you who use your mind to compare, to discriminate which remove or take away the peacefulness of your mind. The Zen Master has the ability to remove the delusion in your mind so that it can become whole again. Zen Master Huang Po was famous for teaching his students by hitting them with his cane. His successor Lin Chi came to ask him 3 times about the meaning of Buddhist Dharma, and in all 3 times, Lin Chi was beaten by Master Huang Po's cane. Why? It is because the Zen masters do not want to transmit the original form, Bản Lai Diện Mục, through human words or logic, but through the true awakening of the pure mind. After the 3rd beating, Lin Chi did not want to study with his master anymore, thinking that the master and him did not have the right karmic connection to continue further, and Lin Chi asked for permission to leave the temple. Master Huang Po allowed him to leave and said that Lin Chi did not have to go far, but should go to his elder brother's Dai Ngu place and learn from him instead. When Lin Chi arrived at Dai Ngu place and was asked, "Why do you come here and not stay at your master's, who was an accomplished person already?" Lin Chi then told the elder brother of how he got beaten up 3 times already for bringing up questions about the meaning of Buddhist Dharma. At that moment, the elder brother said, "Do you still not understand the intent of your master? He has been very kind to you already." Through these words, Lin Chi instantly achieved a great awakening. Through this story, then you all should know that the more you are attached to words, the harder it will be for you to see your original mind. You have to go to where your mind cannot think. Then you will be able to liberate yourself. What is it that your mind cannot reach? It is a place of no words and no thoughts. That is how you can see your pure mind. Now back to the text. If you don't understand the oneness, then you will be stuck in duality and waste your effort. Chase away existence, then you make it exist. Follow emptiness, then it is not empty. For a practitioner whose mind is still stuck on the form of motion and stillness, then his path, whether it will be the Pure Land sect or Zen meditation, will not be productive. He will not be able to have a blissful and free mind. Why? It is because if he abandons existence, then he is stuck in emptiness. If he abandons emptiness, then he is stuck in existence. Emptiness and existence came from the thought of one's mind. They do not exist by themselves. You will be chasing emptiness and existence around when you emphasize one over the other, which will not help you in realizing your pure mind. If you know that motion and stillness are just temporary thoughts, then by not initiating a thought, then both motion and stillness will naturally disappear. If you use motion to contain stillness and stillness to contain motion, then your practice is dependent one thought over another, which is not the way of Zen Buddhism. A practitioner whose practice is based on thoughts, based on form of birth and death, will not be able to enter no thought samadhi. Existence and emptiness are just thoughts of the mind. If a practitioner uses his mind to follow this duality, then he is using false thought to search false thoughts. There was a student who came to seek Dharma talk with a master. The master asked, "You came here praying for what?" The student answered, "Great master, I came here to seek knowledge, to become a Buddha." The master laughed out loud and said, "I don't see anything. You used the Buddha to find a Buddha. Then when will you be able to find him?" Once the student heard this answer, he experienced a great awakening right away. The ancient people experienced great awakening easily because their minds were not easily attached to words or searching or hoping for things. They just need a word from a master to shake the foundation of their minds to wake them up. Today, practitioners are different. The master that they would search for must have fame and good reputation. The master must have big temples with thousands of students or followers cheering them on like royalties. But for the master who used fame to decorate their personality and increase his worth, how can they be awakened to the true self for you to study under? Therefore, when I look at these so-called masters whose purpose was to attract fame, I just quietly laugh inside. Their temples have so many students and followers. Yet there are small temples that have true master and arhats right in plain sight of most people, but were totally ignored. Why is that? It is because most people do not pray for liberation, but pray for famous teacher instead. I remember a worshipper who came to the temple, and I asked him if he had taken the basic vows of the 5 precepts yet. He answered, "Yes." So I told him that if you have taken the initial vows already, then why don't you go and learn the Dharma from that teacher instead of coming to learn from me? He replied that he did not know what he was doing. He saw many of his friends come to the famous monk to be initiated, so he just followed and did the same. A-di-đà Phật. How can you be successful in your practice if you don't know what you are doing and just follow your friend's leads? How can you be successful in maintaining your precept, achieving samadhi and gaining wisdom if you blindly follow people? In summary, if your mind still initiates thoughts when motivated by the form of motion and stillness, existence and emptiness, then you are not liberated and will not be able to be calm and free. Now back to the text. Speak a lot, think a lot is not compatible with the way. Banish words, banish thoughts, then nowhere you are stuck. A practitioner who talks and thinks a lot, especially if it is not related to his practice, commits wrong views and thoughts, discriminating between good and bad, or thinking about the world is also creating false views. You all should remember what I have just said about discriminating between good and bad, because they are false views. The ancient master have said that the devout mind has no words, no thoughts. If you can express in words or generate a thought, then you are still attached to forms. You are still attached to the birth and death, and will have rebirth in the 6 realms. The more you talk and think, the farther you are away from your practice. A true practitioner should, on the outside, eliminate all connection, while inside generate no thoughts. Then you have returned to the source and be at peace within the house of the pure mind. You don't have to generate any effort or create any karmic credit. There were people who were so delusional that they cut off a piece of their flesh as an offering to the Buddhas. They thought that by cutting off their hand, a piece of flesh on their chest, or their legs, they would attain miraculous blessing and become liberated. The Buddhas care and want to liberate all beings. So how can they accept these mundane offerings? But because these beings were delusional, so what could the Buddha do except just smile? The Master have taught us to disconnect from the outside and generate no thought on the inside. So why are you wasting time praying for causative form? Even worse, these deluded beings teach others to follow the same path as them. One deluded being wasn't enough, so they had to get many others to follow them into the abyss while thinking they were on the path of liberation. There were a lot of people who did this in the past. The karmic result of these practitioners who commit self-inflicted wounds is to be born with handicap or physical impairments. If this is the case, then do you think you should follow the path at all? You all need to be smart and wise about your practice. Think deeply and see clearly the nature of all dharmas. See clearly the nature of the person in front of you, so you can tell if he is practicing the teaching of the Tathagata correctly or not. Don't follow the footsteps of one of the Buddha's students. Bo Now, who was tricked by his former teacher into killing almost 1,000 persons in order to achieve his spiritual goals. That was an ultimate stupid action to do. Yet there was someone dumb enough to do it. If he did not have the opportunity to have met the Buddha and be awakened by him, then what do you think will be his karmic results? It will be thousands and thousands of lifetimes in hell and not be able to have a chance for rebirth due to his sins of murdering thousands of people. After paying the price in hell, then he would have to go through many lifetimes as animals. Once he reaches the human form rebirth, he would have been born with many physical handicaps and be in the worst of all locations and situations like slave, servant, or one who suffered persecution. Therefore, when you are following the path, the less you talk, the less you think, then all dharmas will be understood. In fact, I would recommend no talk, no thinking. It's even better, because by doing this, all situations will be at peace and in place, because the motion and stillness form will have no place to abide in your mind. Millions of dharmas are created by the mind. If the mind is free and not attached to the dharmas, then how can the dharmas be born? So, if you eliminate talking and thinking, then even if you don't want to, your mind still returns to the state of constant bliss. At that point, then everywhere is the blissful Dharma body. The ancient Zen master had a saying, "Here are yellow flowers and green bamboo leaves. The Dharma's bodies of the Tathagata are everywhere." At this moment, then I think you all should not have anything else to pray for. If you are willing to let go of everything, then who is there to imprison you? Think about it. Who can control you? It is only you who could control you. At the age of 14, he was already an ordained monk. The future fourth Zen patriarch, Dao Tin, came to have a Dharma talk with his master, Tang San, and asked to be trained in liberation Dharma. The Zen master looked straight into the young monk's eyes and asked, "Who is the person controlling you?" The young monk looked back and forth and replied that no one is controlling him. "If no one is controlling you, then why are you asking for liberation Dharma?" The master replied. Once the young monk heard that, he was awakened. In Zen, it is very easy to be awakened once all karmic conditions are set in place. There was another monk who had practiced for many years but did not achieve yet. One day he went outside and saw a woman buying fresh meat on the side road. The woman asked the butcher, "Could you sell me a piece of meat that does not have any fatty tissues on it?" In which the butcher replied, "The meat I am selling has pure meat everywhere and contains no fatty tissues." After hearing this, that monk was awakened. Do you see how easy that was for ancient practitioners to achieve? Today, practitioners read and listen to so many lectures and sutras, and yet still stand outside. Isn't this due to strong attachment to words, which they could not let go? It is like a spider spinning so many webs that itself was trapped within it. Similarly, we spin our own webs of false thoughts, delusion, dreams, and hopes, and then lay in there and struggle with it. Then we scream out loud for help, not realizing that we created the walls for our own prisons, nobody else. Now back to the text. Back to the source and attain the principle. Follow what shines will lead to loss. A few moments to reflect is better than the emptiness of the past. Master Tang San's intention in these 4 lines was to remind the practitioner to make it a habit to look into his own mind and pay attention to each thought so he could see the original form in them. He should not allow each thought to see or attach to the worldly form. There are practitioners who think that by allowing yourself to recognize your own achievement level, then you are projecting false thought. They incorrectly interpreted that the Buddha said that there is no achievement, no attainment. Therefore, allowing yourself to recognize your achievement is wrong. A-di-đà Phật. This person is deluded and yet wanted to teach others to follow the same delusional logic. In the past, if the Buddha did not come to tell his future disciple that he had attained enlightenment, then who would have known? A person who drinks a glass of water knows if it's cold or hot or warm. The Buddha mentioned about not emphasizing attainment was to protect his student from being attached and pray for achievement. If there is no achievement, then why did the Buddha talk about the 40 or so achievement made by the Bodhisattvas in the Suragama Sutra? A-di-đà Phật. I know that this section is confusing. Therefore, I have often said to all of you that when you practice, you must use wisdom of the pure mind to identify what is true and what is not. If you don't use the wisdom of the pure mind, then you will let the worldly form take away all of your blessing. I have seen many practitioners who have been on the path for 30 to 40 years and have accumulated so many blessings until one day, when the criticism or gossip of the world was too great to overcome or to bear, they initiated a thought which burned away all the blessings they had. Do you not see that as wasteful? Therefore, I advise you all that as a practitioner, you need to develop and embrace the idea that everything is empty and temporary. If you can recognize this, then you will see that all dharmas are also empty and impermanent. There would be no me or you who did the criticism and who did the listening. If this is true, then who is the person initiating the thought of greed, anger, and ignorance? If you can attain this state of mind, then you are above the 8 winds which fan the passions. There was a Zen master, Nam Tuen Đại Sư, who went down to visit a fellow monk at the base of the mountain. Once he entered the temple, he was surprised to see how many others were already there to greet him. Beside the many people in attendance, there were already foods and drinks set up for him to dine. He asked the temple head monk, "Normally, when I venture outside, I seldom mention it to anyone. How did you know that I would come and prepare such wonderful greeting and offering?" The head monk replied that the spiritual guardian of this temple visited him in his dream last night and told him that the master would be coming here today, and we made all the preparation this morning. The master then blamed himself. If that is the case, then I am incompetent. I practice and yet allow the spirit to read my mind. A-di-đà Phật. Do you all see that? He practiced the Zen tradition of empty mind, and yet the spirits were able to read it. How could this have happened unless he did initiate thoughts about the trip beforehand? Thoughts that you generated can be hidden from most people in front of you, but to the spirit, you could not, because they can read your minds. The Zen master lamented that he was incompetent because he let the spirit read his thoughts. He was supposed to be an example of an empty mind, but failed to perform. A small remnant of thoughts or false views that exist in your mind can hold you back to endure more rebirths. There was a real-life master named Do Dong Fa, who was an accomplished meditationer. But in his meditation, there were still remnants of thought that he could not let go. He had to be reborn in a future life to experience, learn, and overcome his weakness and his attachment. So, while following the path, you have to learn to use and apply your wisdom correctly. You should listen closely to religious teaching, but you don't have to believe it. Even the Buddha said that you can listen to my teaching, but you need to make sure that it is correct before you can use it. You should not blindly believe in anything he said. The Buddha was concerned that outsiders would use his words for no good, or even change his word for their own benefits and mislead the general population. If the words made by the Tathagata should not be completely trusted, then should you trust others who you do not really know? Listen, but use your wisdom to analyze, to see if it fits the Buddhist philosophy and the karmic law. If it does, then you should test it out to see if it will improve your mind. If not, then throw it away so that it does not taint your mind. You should continuously review your mind so that you know how to go back to the original mind. Once you reach a point where your mind stops initiating thoughts, then you are almost near the land of freedom and liberation. Don't believe what the outsiders taught, that the mind should not be attached to anything, to mean that the mind is completely hollow, empty like a rock, with no reaction. Remember that in the original Buddha mind, there is reflection and illumination. If there is no illumination, then who is here talking to you all? Even though my mind is non-changing and in complete stillness, my mind has the ability to illuminate, to shine. I use my compassion to lecture the Dharma to you all. I am not emotionless. I follow the path for the sake of all beings. I express myself to help all beings. What is the point of practicing to be heartless and without expression like a rock? If the result of practicing is not being able to help all beings, then I would rather die than wasting time practicing. I remind myself that all beings are my source of joy. If there is a time when I cannot expound on the Dharma to help all beings, then I would end my life right away and move on to the next world. Liberating all beings is my passion. If that choice is no longer available, then what is the purpose of staying in this world? I would sit down to meditate, take a deep breath, and slowly leave my body. This would be better. Once you have attained a mind that does not automatically react to the outside world, then you have correctly followed Zen principle. Then you do not have to pray or search for your original mind anymore, because it automatically appears in front of you. It is like when you are sitting in front of a dirty mirror. You are not able to see your face, but once the mirror surface is clean, then your image will automatically appear. Similarly, this is what happens to a practitioner who cleans up his mind. If your mind is dependent on what you see, hear, and know to analyze the situation, then your mind will be attracted to logic and words. It will initiate false view and be separated further from your pure mind. A few moments to reflect is better than the emptiness of the past. If the practitioner constantly analyzes and cleans up his mind, then he will enter the emptiness of the pure mind. This is a state similar to that of the Tathagata. Nothing can be compared to it. Now back to the text. The emptiness of the past is transformed. It was all due to false views. Don't need to seek the truth. Just eliminate your views. In these 4 lines, Master Tang Shan clearly said that the have and have not that you think you know are only false views. The existence of these false views is dependent on the circumstances. It is not permanent. So how do you go about extinguishing them? To do that, you have to let go of the ideas of have and have not. For a practitioner, if when he enters the samadhi, then he sees the have not. When he leaves or awakens from samadhi, then he sees the have. Therefore, the have and have not are dependent on your state of mind and thoughts generation. The one who goes beyond this state sees his pure mind, no matter if he sits or stands or walks. Practice this way reflects the way of the Mahayana path. Once the practitioner has eliminated the false view, then even if he doesn't seek the truth, it still automatically appears. There are 2 assumptions that most practitioners could not avoid. They are views of permanence and impermanence. If these 2 can be eliminated, then all thoughts become the truth. All the false views that you want to chase away automatically become the correct views. This section can only be understood and confirmed by someone who has experienced it. How can I claim all false views can be transformed to correct views? When you are still practicing, then false thoughts are false thoughts. But once you have returned to your pure mind, then each thought you made is a part of your compassion to rescue all beings. This thought will encourage you to sacrifice yourself to go further to help all beings. A true practitioner is someone who must embrace the idea of helping and be compassionate to all beings. At first, you practice to improve yourself, but at a higher level, you must practice to help all beings. There was a Zen monk who was asked, "Why did you become a monk?" He replied that he wanted to rescue all beings, so he chose to be on the path of liberation. This is the right attitude for a monk to take. Others could have answered that he chose to become a monk so that he could be free and at peace. This sounds so small and selfish. He only cares for his own success and comfort, while ignoring the pain and suffering of fellow beings. Now back to the text. Both sides not accepted. Avoid seeking after them. Once opinions are raised, the mind gets confused and lost. In these lines, Master Tang Shan wanted us to know that dualist views block and surround the pure mind. At the same time, your pure mind is contaminated by the images of the outside world, which create lots of distraction. There was a Zen monk who was washing his face in the morning, and when he raised his hand up to his face, he saw about 900 random thoughts rising and falling in his mind. So if you say that you practice to eliminate all of these thoughts, then when do you think you will be able to do it? All you need to do is to recognize and accept the original mind, and from then onward practice diligently. That would be enough. But if you want to delete all the noisy and random thoughts in your mind, that could be very difficult to do because these thoughts were your teachers and were part of you in countless lifetimes. It is not easy to eliminate these thoughts that are deeply settled within you. Therefore, Master Tang Shen reminded us not to waste time gossiping, talking about things that are not important, but devote that time to your practice instead. Even if the person who you are gossiping about is a bad person, then let karmic law take its course. You don't need to gossip and waste your time on it. If you are a true practitioner, you should only say things that promote peace and tranquility to everyone so that your own mind will also be at peace. No one will hate you. This will make it easier for you to help all beings. When you gossip, you bring in your ego, false views, opinions, and generate a disturbed mind. If you stop wasting time on gossiping, then you have made it half the way in your practice already. From my experience, a novice practitioner pays a lot of attention to worldly forms. He would judge the worshipper, his colleagues, and even his masters. If anyone initiates a thought that does not fit his view, then he would criticize them. Based on that, who is it that should deserve the criticism? The one who gossips or the one being gossiped upon? Let me tell you that the one being gossiped upon can sleep soundly, whereas the gossiper generates a lot of thoughts and ill will in which his mind will have to withhold and has no peace. This was my own experience. I used to criticize and judge those who did not uphold their vows. At the time, nobody challenged me on this. Until one day, my master called upon me and said, "You have almost all qualities to be a good Zen monk, but your gossiping and judging remain. You still think that you preserved your vows well, but others did not." Right at that moment of being corrected by my teacher, my whole world collapsed and I understood my weaknesses. From that moment forward, I gossip no more. I no longer hurt myself through gossiping. Nam Mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.